Hi, so this week we are joined by Joe Coshan, who was assistant editor at KMTV.
Hi.
So what is your day-to-day like in your role?
Uh, Pretty different every day, to be fair. You never know what stories you're going to cover. Um, it can be pretty stressful some days, and you can have so many different big stories that you want to cover in Kent. And then there's other days where you're like, oh my God, there's not a lot going on. It's a bit quiet. So it's juggling that, and then you've got to make something happen or find something a bit more creative. So it's very different. So just to walk you through a day, I suppose. So we sort of come in the morning, go through our sort of morning news conference, talk through what the big ideas are of the day. What works for TV is always the big one as well, because there'll be some stories that are doing really well sort of in print and in the papers, but they won't necessarily work for TV. So it's how we can, turn them into good pictures for a TV audience and make them quite engaging. Then we'd get, so for me, I'm mainly in the newsroom now, sort of overseeing the programme, putting the running orders together, cutting and writing sort of ULAs and things like that. And then while the reporters are out filming, and then it's just collating all that. So in the afternoon, it's a bit of a rush. It almost seems like in the middle of the day, you're like, okay, it's all bubbling along. But by the last few hours towards the programme, you're sort of rushing around, writing things, reacting to breaking news, and then obviously for the 5:30 programme. So pretty full on, but you've got to be switched on all the time, I think.
Yeah. And when it comes to the stories, what do you, not what you contribute, but like, are you involved in the entire process from start to finish?
Yeah, so that's the exciting thing. I think, especially at KMTV, you are doing everything, a bit of everything. So like I was working behind the scenes to to sort of managing the program now. So you do have to sort of dip in and out and have different skills for everything. So yeah, so I'll sort of pick what the best stories are of the day, or what I think will do the best for our audience, and then just assign the reporters who I think might be the best to cover that story, depending on their personalities and what their strengths are.
That's quite good. Yeah, it's
Mm.
good to get an idea of your team and what they're good at and stuff. And skills-wise, what would you say are the most important skills when you're working in TV?
Um, there's a few. I think you've got to be very creative and
Yeah.
very imaginative, because there will be times where you're covering a story, again, like I said, where there's not many pictures to do the talking. It's such a big story, but there's not a lot you can do with it. And they're the ones where you've got to be creative with what you're filming, and it's asking people to, there's weird things like it's a classic, oh, can you make us a cup of tea, or can you start holding hands for us? And it's weird things like that for quirkier stories, or more emotional stories that you have to start doing where there's not many pictures to do the talking. So it's just looking around and looking at the big picture, not just thinking about what the story is at whole, but how you're going to portray that to a TV audience. So I think that's one skill that you've always got to be thinking about. You've got to be very good at time managing, because it's not as simple as picking up a phone. I mean, it is maybe more simple now with Zoom, but even so, I think it's still more important to go and see people and film with them. So I feel like you have to be very aware of your logistics and managing, right, I need to be here at this time, and then I need to be back to edit this. And because we at KMTV, you do everything really, from setting up your interviews to going out and filming them and self-shooting them, and then you're scripting your report, and then you're editing it. So you are doing everything. You've got to be very good at time managing. It's such great experience, but you've got to be very good at managing logistics and handling pressure, I suppose.
Yeah. And how would you recommend people can build on those skills? Because I think a very common, maybe misconception, I don't know if it's true or not, but a lot of people think that you can't get work experience for TV.
I think you've just got to be, and it's what I did when I was younger, you've just got to be a bit of a pest and just sort of knock on doors and just offer to do things. I know it's not ideal, but do offer to do things and help out and volunteer. And that's how I started at KMTV, just volunteering to do certain things, going out and filming interviews. I had I still do have a real passion for sport. So I was bringing them loads of sports stories and going out and filming them and interviewing and doing that on my weekends and things like that. Because I knew that's what I wanted to get into. So you do have to make sacrifices, I think. And then they see that, and I think they'll reward you for it. And they'll go, well, actually, you're doing quite a lot now. We probably have to pay you. And it's that balance, it's earning that respect. And I suppose once people see that you're willing to go the extra mile, they'll help you out as well.
Yeah, because you started when we were still at uni, didn't you?
Mm. Yeah,
And
that was the thing. I thought while I was at uni, it was very much of I knew once I left uni, I needed a job. So I was really just banging down the door. I didn't really concentrate on uni work as maybe much as I should have or should have. But I think it was more I wanted to get in, knock on as many doors as possible. So I was juggling, I think in third year, I was juggling 3 freelance jobs,
yeah,
worried about whether I'd get a job at the end. And I was offered something with all of them, picked KMTV because I think I enjoyed it the most and I wanted to go into TV.
yeah,
But yeah, I think you've got to, so I started as an intern at KMTV. I started as a volunteer at KMTV,
yeah.
then as an intern, working behind the scenes, doing things like rolling the auto cue or managing the sound desk or the playout system or doing a vox pop on a Medway High Street, which is just
Fun.
really glamorous. Yeah, don't let anyone ever tell you TV is glamorous because it really isn't at times. But it is exciting, and you work your way up, and then obviously, yeah, in 3 years, I think something like that, I'm now sort of managing that, which is quite exciting.
Yeah. And how was your work changed because of COVID? Because I think KMTV especially did so well with managing doing everything remotely.
Yeah, I can't take the credit for that, to be fair. We've got a technical coordinator, Mark, who is brilliant. He's like the Yoda of just tech and TV, and he was brilliant at getting us set up. So it sort of got to the point where he managed to set up our home studio. So I had a studio in my living room. My wallpaper's pretty much iconic in Kent now, which was quite strange. And it's really weird how he had to adapt. He had his sort of gallery working out of his living room. It was really strange, but we were so determined to carry on because I think it would have been just giving up if we didn't. And I think a lot of people respected that, which showed in, the way our viewers were still tuning in and they still cared.
Yeah.
And they wanted to know what was going on with COVID because there was so much going on, and there still is. But it was tough because you're working from home. You've got to be like, Mum, don't boil the kettle. You can't boil the kettle now. I'm recording something. So it's a bit weird doing it all from your living room, but we adapted. We did really well, and it was a success most nights.
Yeah. People seem to think that, I guess London is sort of the center of journalism and media stuff, but a lot of people, like I've had messages from people who live outside of London and maybe in areas that aren't quite as big, and they think that obviously finding stories is harder, but it's not impossible. So I was wondering how you go about, like, if you have a slow news day, where you'd go about like sourcing your stories and everything.
Well, I think it's firstly, it's really important to have those local stories covered because they're the ones that people care about. They're the ones that they go on social media and, they're on Facebook groups and things like that, moaning about things. But actually, they're the things that people probably care about the most. Oh, have you seen that? They're building more houses around the corner. This is not fair. We're never going to get the traffic bad enough. We're never going to get to schools, things like that. And they're things that people really care about, which I didn't really appreciate before I worked at KMTV, but now you do because they are the issues that people care about. And then if there is a slow news day, I think it's honing in on that. It's going back to basics, like, okay, well, what's going on right now that people really care about? I'll draw on one example. We had one the other week where we were just scrapping around thinking there is nothing going on here. And it's going back to sort of issues of, okay, well, what are things that people care about that we've maybe covered in the past but could do with a follow-up story? So it was like MOT holidays and how the exemptions for them had finished, but whether people were still getting their MOTs or not. So we just spoke to a garage and they sort of said, well, no, like people are just missing them and they're going around driving in sort of unsafe cars and things like that. Or it'll be like a planning issue with a housing development or something. So I think it's just making use of your contacts, I think, as well, and getting regular updates from people. Just don't think that once you've covered a story, that's it. You can get multiple bites of a cherry from it in months and even years to come.
What was your first ever TV package like?
Yeah, this is an embarrassing one for me. It was a sports story. I was covering a feature for KMTV on foot golf, and it was these two people who were really good at foot golf. They were like world champs or European champs. So it was quite cool, and they were from Kent. So I went along and filmed with them. and took them on. It was chucking it down with rain. It was disgusting. It was like a November evening. It was not very nice. And it was just so obviously over the years, you obviously get more experience as you do more packages, but that one, my voice sounds completely strange. The interviews are framed terribly. Like, I watch it back now and I show people who I'm sort of teaching now and looking after now and say, don't do that, don't do this. This is what I did. This is how far you can go. And I think that's the main thing. Like, I was never a natural at TV. I did have to work at it, but it's something you can do. If you really want to do it, you can succeed.
And how would you recommend for people to work on it? Like, if they maybe, because you read like auto cues as part of your presenting stuff, don't you? Like, if people maybe struggle with that, or like, how can they practice?
I think it is simply just practice. You do have to take time in your own time to do that and to practice. Like, I think auto cue is a really good one where we would go and do. So for me, presenting, it was just going down to the studio after the program was done. This is before I was presenting, and just sitting there and reading the scripts for whoever was presenting that day and just going through it, and just you get used to being in that environment. And I think it's more to be comfortable in what you're doing. Don't get me wrong, like, I still make mistakes reading auto cue all the time, and mispronounce things, and it just happens. But it's just practice, and you keep doing it. And it's the same with reporting as well. Your first package isn't going to be an RTS winning piece. It's just not. But as long as it has the foundations to work with, then you just keep practicing and you do things differently. And even now, like, I'll do little things wrong and I'll be like, okay, right, I've learned from that now, I won't do that next time. And that's what KMTV has been brilliant for. It's really sort of owning your mistakes and learning from them, and you gradually just don't do them anymore.
And have you ever had something go like horribly wrong when everything's live, and how have you got around it?
Oh, so many times, so many occasions. There's so many I could draw on. Not to say that things go wrong all the time, but they do in TV, and it's just how you react to them. I think the first time something went monumentally wrong was I was presenting one of my first ever lunchtime news bulletins at KMTV, and our storage system was full. Obviously, we blame technology for this, but it was full, and it meant all of our play-out systems went down because they couldn't have any space to fit all the reports on. So we had nothing. So absolutely nothing to play apart from just me just sitting there with the scripts for them, but with nothing to play. So I remember sitting there. I think the first 3 minutes went fine, and then after that it just died. So I remember hearing everyone just being frantically panicking in the gallery, and I had to sit there and just be this face of just calm, chill out. You can't show any weakness here, and you just have to get through it. And the adrenaline gets you through it. And I think that you need something to go wrong like that to see how you deal with it. You can't put yourself in that situation, and you don't know how you're going to react. But we sort of overcame it. We brought people into the studio to just do sort of emergency 2-ways and things like that, and you get around it. But it does happen, and it's just being calm under pressure and reacting. And I think we did. I think it wasn't our best bulletin in the world, but we got over it. And people are understanding, and even more now during COVID. You have to rely on technology so much now. Even when I was presenting from the living room, that was something that you're relying on the internet, because we were all working remotely. You're relying on signals being sent here, there, and everywhere. And if anything cuts out, it cuts out, and it did on a lot of occasions. But people are more, I think, understanding with that now. But I think they appreciate the commitment to still try and do it.
So when it comes to presenting, if it's just in your living room or whether you're out and about, how do you navigate making sure the sound is okay, like there's not enough echo, making sure there's enough light? Is that like external equipment you bring with you, or is it just you have to just see what happens?
Obviously there's a methodical way of doing it. You do have to just check things, and you can't just assume, it'd be fine, it'd be all right, I'll check it when I get back to the office. Because if you do that, 9 times out of 10 it will have gone wrong somehow. So you've got to be very methodical with that. And I think especially now, especially at KMTV, you are doing everything. So you are managing the sound. You don't have a sound engineer with you. You don't have a cameraman with you. You are doing it. It's you. It's all on you if it goes wrong. So that's a lot of pressure. So you do have to check things. You check you're still recording. You check the sound's working. You wear your headphones or your earphones to make sure you can hear them. If things go wrong that are out of your control when you get back, you just put that down to tech issues and you can't really do much about it. But I suppose it's eliminating those by being really patient. You know, if your interviewee's in a rush and they're saying that, you know, oh, no, I've got 5 minutes. I've only got 5. I've got to do it now. Or I can't. You know, I've only got 5 minutes for you. That doesn't. I know that's it can be quite off-putting, and you skip steps, but don't, because what will happen is something will go wrong. The interview will be done. You'll find out it hasn't recorded.
Yeah.
And then you've got that awkward. Well, I haven't got anything. I'm gonna have to call them back.
Yeah.
I know they're busy. They probably won't do it now. I've lost an interview. Rather than just taking that extra 30 seconds just to check, make sure things are charged or make sure things are plugged in properly. The presenting one's a slightly different one because you're almost in a different place, being managed by someone else. You've got someone in your ear saying, right, move here. There's light on you. You need more light. And that was a major one in my living room. It's when it gets dark, it's dark. You can't really do much. You have to put a lot of light on it. And it's quite a dark room. So it was managing that and knowing how to make myself visible, which was a bit of a challenge. And knowing when mics are a bit temperamental, or, you know, you might have to put a cable somewhere different, or especially in COVID, there was a lot of we used a lot of wireless mics for our interviews when we were out, and they were like, you put them on a mic stand so they're a bit closer to the person's mouth. They just keep falling over in the wind, and I must have broken 2 mics in lockdown. These are expensive bits of kit, which they're not very happy about. But you can't help it, and you're just like, you've got to pick it back up, make sure it's plugged in again, make sure you can still hear them. And it's just being methodical and just patient and just taking time, I think, would be my best advice.
Yeah. When it comes to like specialist equipment and cameras or any editing software you use, what's it like at KMTV?
We use a bit of everything, really. I don't put it this way, you're asking the wrong person, because I'm a bit of a technophobe. So I look at, right, I've got a camera, I've got a microphone, I've got a tripod, and that'll do. But the really good sort of bits and bobs we use, obviously we use Final Cut to edit our packages on. We also use sort of Adobe Audition to record our voiceovers. And in lockdown, the tool that we were using the most to keep on air was something called Vmix Call. And it was a really good way of people joining a remote call and listening in to your program, basically. Don't know how the ins and outs of it work. I couldn't tell you, but it was magical, because we were interviewing MPs on it. We were interviewing really sort of senior figures on it. And all you do, you just give them a code. They don't have to download it. You can do sort of as live chats, because you can integrate your camera with their camera, not like a Zoom chat. So you're not necessarily recording a Zoom like this and then going to the studio to record something else. You can have them integrated, which I thought was really nice. And definitely kept us going. If we didn't have that, I don't know what we would have done.
And when it comes to interviews, so you just mentioned talking to MPs and stuff. Have you ever sort of struggled with it, like maybe got a bit nervous because it's a big name?
Oh yeah, of course you do. Senior figures and like people with, I don't know, power, you sort of do get a bit awkward and uncomfortable, because you know you do have to push them and ask them difficult questions. I think that would be one sort of advice, like bit of advice I'd have, is to try not to feel uncomfortable, because they will feel just as uncomfortable as you having to do an interview, knowing that you could be asking them difficult questions. And so it's almost like, don't give them the opportunity to get out of that. You have to sort of, it is a bit like playing chess. And they will, because they know it's TV, there's easy ways of just extending answers and getting out of you could sort of skip around the question. Don't be afraid to ask it again and go, actually, I want to pick you up on this point. Can you focus more on this? And you do have to be a bit more pedantic, even if it is awkward, but they will respect you for it. Like they will, because they know that it's your job. You're doing your job at the end of the day, and they can't really complain about that.
Is there anything about working in TV that people might not know?
A few bits. I think, firstly, as I mentioned earlier, it's not as glamorous as it looks. You don't just for presenting anyway, you don't just sit on a sofa and just read it. You can do, and some people do, but not most people don't anymore. You don't have the luxury of being a presenter anymore. You do have to be almost a journalist and an anchor, because I'm writing all my scripts myself. I'm checking them legally. I'm checking facts and going through it with a fine tooth comb to make sure what I'm saying and what I'm delivering is completely completely accurate.
Yeah.
So it isn't just a case of you look good, you can go on there and you can present. It's not the case anymore. You've got to be on it. Other ones are just TV in general, filming things. As I mentioned before, you have to be very aware of your logistics and where you're going and the hours that go into making 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. I think they say that for every hour you filmed, it's like a minute's worth of footage, or it's a minute's worth of your piece. So know that you're going to have to put in hours to get something so small back. Granted, when it goes well, you're like, oh, thank God, that really worked. But there'll be other occasions where you'll just be thinking, oh my God, I haven't got enough. It doesn't work. I haven't got enough footage. Yeah. So it is really thinking about so many different things. It's almost spinning plates throughout the day, and different parts of your piece. You're almost editing it as you're doing it while you're out filming and thinking, oh, that'll look good. I can say this bit here, and you're scripting it as you go. And I think it's a very methodical process, but it's definitely not as easy as it looks.
Yeah. And you mentioned like logistical stuff and checking things, making sure it's legally compliant and all that. And we did a bit of that sort of stuff as part of our degree. Do you think that you would have got as far as you have, or would have got the job that you have without a degree?
Without a degree, maybe. I think it's. I learned quite a lot at uni, but also I had the benefit of a lot of experience and going out and working.
Yeah.
So that was from a young age. So I feel like the degree wasn't necessarily necessary. So don't be put off. Don't think, oh, I have to go to uni and get myself into loads of debt. If you can't, you don't need to. As long as you've got some experience, you've done some writing or done something, it's a start. But I do think I wouldn't be where I am today without the NCTJ diploma that went with it.
Yeah.
I don't, because I wouldn't be in a management role, really having to check legal things to make sure we're not breaking any Ofcom requirements or getting complaints.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to do that without that.
And with NCTJ, because the law one like essential as part of it?
Oh, I can't remember.
Because I remember sports as like an optional one, and
yeah, I feel like it was, and I think I feel like the law one was compulsory. So like the likes of sport. Yeah. Court reporting wasn't, and there's things like that aren't essential. So I didn't do the court reported module, but I did obviously the shorthand module, which you definitely do need for court reporting. I have had to sit through some court cases before, and you wouldn't be able to do it without shorthand. Yeah. You wouldn't be able to take things down. It's impossible. So that's really helped in those cases as well. But some of the optional ones, like they are optional for a reason. It's only if you really want to go into like a niche area like sport that would be quite good, and I'm sure employers would go for that. Yeah.
Do you have any last words of wisdom for people who are wanting to get into TV?
I'll just repeat what I said earlier. Be a pest. Really annoy people to give you work, and just ping off that email to someone. Don't be afraid of doing it. They'll respect you for it. You might not hear anything back, but then there's that slim chance that you do and you get somewhere with it. And that's the main bit, especially in the climate we're in now. You just got to take any chance you can get and prove that you can work in TV if that's what you want to do.